Welcome to episode number 15 of Fueled. I am so excited about today's guest, CALEB MADDIX. He has done some incredible things. He's a 14-year-old entrepreneur. His goal is to have made $1 million by February. He is living a life that we can all be inspired by. He's doing some great things with personal development with his book, Kids for Success. And I'm really excited about this interview. CALEB, could you tell the audience a little bit about yourself and what you're doing right now?
Well, the first thing I want to say is, like, dude, this guy right here, he's awesome, man. Like, he made this thing happen. You know, he's been reaching out to me for a while. Tell them the story real quick, like, just like a minute, like, about how you reached out to me and how this whole thing happened.
Yeah.
'Cause you're awesome, dude.
Yeah, so first of all, I'm at TEDx right now. CALEB just gave a fantastic speech. You can go check it out on TED. Just fantastic, inspirational speaker. But I reached out through CALEB through Instagram and Facebook, just messaging him a couple times saying, I got to get to know you, you're really cool, and I want to connect with you. And then I came down to this TEDx event about an hour and a half from my house and walked up to him, introduced myself, and here we are.
Dude, that's just so awesome, man. Listen, if I had to bet on a human being, I would totally bet on this guy right here. He's got some fire, some motivation. I love what he's doing. So, yeah, so basically, real quick, to answer your question about who I am, what I do. My name is CALEB MADDIX. I'm 14 years old. I own a company called Kids for Success. Made over $100,000 doing that company, doing what I do there. And I was also just voted in the top 20 must-follow people, top 20 most motivational influencers on the planet. But basically, my thing is I just give people motivation, inspiration, and education. So I love what this guy right here is doing, and I'm excited to do this podcast real quick.
Yeah, thank you so much. And CALEB, how do you define success?
That's a great question. How do I define success? Now, whenever I take pictures at an event, I hold up 4 fingers. Now, the reason why is, number one, because my company is called Kids for Success. But the second reason why is because I really define success by 4 things. It means to progress physically, financially, relationally, and spiritually. Like that's what it's about for me. So a lot of people, they define success financially, or a lot of people define success spiritually, or a lot of people define success relationally or physically, but I bring them all together, and I think that if you're balanced and if you work hard and if you're progressing in those areas, you're a successful individual.
Fantastic. And CALEB, you were telling me a little bit about this earlier, but how do you do your goals? I mean, everyone has different ways to set their goals, and I've toyed around with a couple of different ways. What do you find to be the most successful way to set your goals?
Yeah, so I mean, I just sit down and I say, you know, what do I want to do? I think a lot of people, they're like, they force themselves to do a goal, but I think just sitting down and asking yourself, what do I want to do? What's something that when I accomplish it, like I'm going to feel fulfilled and amazing? So I sit down and I do that, and then I bring more, I sit down and I bring more clarity to it. So instead of saying, okay, like, for example, one of my goals is to do a TED Talk, which I just got to do today. Instead of saying, I want to do a TED Talk, I say, I want to do a TED Talk by this date. So I set out a date. I start putting in the work for it. I start putting in the action, but also I write out my goals every single morning and every single night. And actually 3 of my goals I've been writing out for the last 6 months have come to pass within the last month, which is the first one I wrote out was to do a TED Talk, and I just did one today. The second one was I wanted to speak with Tony Robbins, and I'm speaking with him in February, and as well as one of them was to speak with Gary Vaynerchuk, and I spoke with him in Sydney, Australia. But that's kind of my process.
Yeah, so Fuel listeners, for those of you who do not know, Tony Robbins is the #1 guy in personal development. He is the top. You can't get above Tony Robbins, and CALEB MADDIX is doing that interview in February. So I'm happy for you and excited for you.
Appreciate it.
And what would you consider the #1 tool for success?
#1 tool for success, man. That's a really great question. I think at the end of the day, it just comes down to, I think, okay, like I get to ask this question all the time because my book is called Keys to Success for Kids. So I talk about the keys to success. But when people ask me, the #1 answer I give is obsession. I think people who are the most successful are always the most obsessed with whatever they do. So you look at Oprah. She was obsessed with having the #1 TV show. You look at somebody like Steve Jobs. He was obsessed with building Apple and bringing it to the entire world. And that's kind of what I do is I'm an obsessed human being. Like I studied magic for a year, and that was like all I did. Like I was obsessed with that. I was obsessed with baseball. But I always pick that one thing, and I stay obsessed with that. And I think that's the #1 word and tool for success is having an obsession for what your goal is and what you're trying to accomplish.
I absolutely agree with that, and just obsession, anything you're doing in life, and you've used obsession and had success, and that's like one of my goals, to be obsessive about what I do, obsessive with basketball, obsessive with running, and obsessive with my podcast. So that's great. And what are you most proud of?
Ooh, what am I most proud of? I think I'm most proud of the 6 to 7 people who have messaged me and told me that they were going to commit suicide, but they didn't because they seen my video. Like that was probably the number one thing that most, because I've had a lot of cool accomplishments. I've spoke with some amazing people. I've been on, I've had videos that hit over 4 million views. I've been on TV network with 8 million people. But really, what I'm most proud of is those people who I've impacted, the kids who I've impacted, but more importantly, the people who are going to commit suicide but didn't because of my inspiration. That's what I'm proud of.
That's so cool. And you've had a couple of YouTube videos that have hit over 1 million views, right?
Yes,
4
sir.
million.
How many?
4 million. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, well, that's incredible. So, Fuel listeners, this is a huge interview for this podcast. Caleb has some fantastic knowledge. I hope you're taking notes. He knows what he's talking about. And in your TED that you just talked about, you talked a lot about impact before income.
Definitely.
Could you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, I think this is for teens, right? So this is perfect. I get asked a bunch of times through messages and stuff like this, like, what's my best advice for a teen entrepreneur or a teen striving for their goal? And I would say number one piece of advice is focus on your impact rather than your income. Now, what I mean by that is a lot of times we get caught up in ourselves. We get caught up in, what we're trying to do and making the money that we're trying to make and doing all these stuff. But if at the end of the day you sit down and you say, how can I give the most to people and how can I provide the most value, that's when you'll truly break through in success. Like a lot of people, you're not going to have $1 million income providing $100 value. You have to give millions of dollars, not in cash, but in time and effort and just everything that you're doing.
I love that. Provide value. That's so huge. If you want to be able to have an influence and you want to provide a product and you want to have a following, you can't expect to have that without first adding value. So that is so huge. And what is 1 or 2 attributes that you've acquired that has contributed to your success?
Man, dude, I'm so impressed with this guy's questions. I mean, I've gone on podcasts with 40-year-olds who have had 20 years of business, millionaires, and they don't even ask as good questions as this. Great question. So what 2 attributes have brought me my success? I think it comes back to what I was just talking about. Number one, my number one attribute is obsession. I'll go a little bit deeper on that, meaning whenever, I started off baseball. That was all I wanted to do. I wanted to become the shortstop for the New York Yankees, and literally I woke up every single day at 5 and 6 a.m. and I went to the field and I played. Even if it was raining, I would study, I would read, I would do all this stuff. I was obsessed with that. Whenever I was into magic, I learned magic to the point where I could blow anybody's mind. It was crazy what I did there. I learned juggling. I was obsessed with that. And then finally entrepreneurship, I became obsessed with it, and look at the results that's happening with it. But I think obsession is a really big attribute. But I think probably the second one is confidence. I've been in rooms, I keep going back to this, but I've been in rooms with a lot of successful people, and a lot of kids would kind of get timid, or they would feel like, I'm not, I don't deserve to be here. But I really have confidence in myself and in my future and what I'm doing, to the point where I believe in myself. So I think confidence and obsession are the 2 things that have brought me my success.
I love it. And something my mom's always telling me is that people look to you to see how you feel about yourself.
Oh yeah,
and
that's
to see
good.
how they should judge you. So
look at that.
Other people are always looking at you to see how you feel about yourself. So
tweet that out. Tweet that out to all the Feel for Teens listeners out there. I love it.
Yeah. So
mom
fantastic.
quote right there. # mom quote.
Yeah, I got a pretty cool mom. And who has been your biggest mentor?
My biggest mentor. Now that's actually an easy question. I acted like it was hard at first, but my biggest mentor is my dad. Easily, 100%. Whenever I'm traveling and he's doing a lot of stuff, he's right there with me. Whenever I went up today to do my TED Talk, just probably an hour ago, if that, he was right there encouraging me, doing our routine, doing all that stuff. So my dad's been my biggest mentor. He's taught me everything I know. He's been there for me. And listen, I'm humbled. People message me don't you feel that you're only successful because you're dad? And I don't really have a response to that, because I am successful because of the amazing dad that I have. And my goal is to help other kids who don't have that dad to influence them as well.
I love it, and I love how you have that humility. Your dad has helped you, but look where you've come. There's no one can do that for you. You've learned how to become a great speaker and done a lot in success and learned so much yourself and been obsessed with your goals, and you've achieved it. And I love your story about baseball. Anyone can be successful. They just need to be obsessed. If you want to be a great basketball player, get up every morning at 5 a.m. and do your drills before everyone else is even willing to wake up. And do the things that no one else is willing to do. So that's so cool.
I love it. I love this interview because I literally feel like a mirror standing right next to me, and we're just going at it. It's awesome. So
I know, it's so cool. I mean, after meeting us, telling my mom, I was like, I've never met someone who I feel like so much like me in the way that you think and the way that you communicate with other people. Yeah. It's so cool. It's so cool. So, what is one habit that you have that contributes to your success?
Man, these are amazing questions. I'm so impressed. Number one habit I've had is the habit of personal growth and the habit of learning. I think that the key to success, KEY, is to keep educating yourself. That's what it comes down to. So there's that, and then also like this is what I say a lot is the person hungriest to learn will always be fed the most results. So I'm all about reading. I read every single day. I read a book a week. I'm all about personal growth. I'm all about doing this stuff. My dad actually paid me $20 for every single book that I read that was a success book. So I've always had that passion for personal growth, and that's a habit that I do every single day that gets me results.
So just feeding yourself knowledge and becoming better at everything you do and what you do. So awesome. And Caleb, you always talk about the gunner rule in your YouTube videos and everything, and all your content that you can put out. What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, I mean, listen, the quote that I say is, the gun that kills the most people is the gunner. You know, a lot of people, they say that they're gonna write a book, or that they're gonna start a business, or that they're gonna lose weight, or gonna spend time with their family, or gonna get better grades in school. They say all the things that they're gonna do, but it ends up killing their dreams. This gun ends up killing their dreams because they keep saying they're going to, but they never actually take action. So that's the rule right there. And if any teens out there that are listening to this, don't say that you want to become an actor, or that you want to become an entrepreneur, or that you're gonna do this. Take action now. It's 2016, and there's amazing things that we can do as kids, as teens, and as adults that we never would have been able to do.
I love it, and after listening to some of your content about the gunna, I have decided and committed to writing to writing a book about personal development, and that's all because of you. You inspired me to do that. And take the gunna out of your life. So cool. And what book would you recommend to few listeners, and why?
My book, Keys to Success for Kids. You can get on Amazon. No,
absolutely.
No, I'm just joking. Yeah, I really would recommend that for kids because But I think the number one book that I recommend for anybody out there is a book called The Success Principles. Now, the book is by Jack Canfield, The Success Principles, and it was the first book that I ever read. It's almost a 400-page book. It's huge, but there's so much knowledge in it. I read it within a year at extremely young, at 8 years old probably, and it's changed my life. It talks about taking responsibility. It talks about believing in yourself, confidence, all the stuff that you need. Probably that's the book I'd recommend, The Success Principles, at least as the first book. And then there's a ton of other books out there. But yeah, that.
Awesome. So, Caleb, you always talk about your hustle and your obsession for what you do. What inspired you to become an entrepreneur?
I think what inspired me to become an entrepreneur is probably, it comes down to impact. It really does. I want to have, okay, I'll give it to you. I'll make it way more simple for you. The reason I became an entrepreneur is one word: freedom. Freedom, number one, freedom for myself. Now, I don't want to be 20 years old looking for jobs. I want to be 20 years old providing jobs. I don't want to be 20 years old getting out of college and be like, oh, I have to do this or that. Like, I want freedom. I want to know that I'm a millionaire by February. My goal is to be a millionaire by February, so I got about 4 or 5 months on that. But that's it right there. Freedom for myself, but then also the second part of freedom is freedom for other people. I want to be able to free somebody up because they listen to my talk. I want 10 years down the road for somebody to walk up to me and say, I listened to your TED Talk and it inspired me, or I listened to your Facebook video and ever since this is what's happened. That's my goal. Freedom for myself and freedom for other people. That's why I'm an entrepreneur.
I love it. And everyone in their entrepreneurial journey has failures. What has been your biggest failure and how have you ever overcame it?
My biggest failure, so when I come back to, I had a video that has 3 million views on Facebook now where I said the reason some people are poor is because they pass over opportunities repeatedly. Now, I wasn't talking about, they're poor like financially. I'm saying poor just like wealthy-wise, like anything, any area of their life. Why somebody would be poor, why they would be thirsty for something is because they're passing over opportunities repeatedly. And I passed over an opportunity a while back because I didn't take it serious enough. It was a $100,000 opportunity, so I'd probably have an extra $100,000 today if I wouldn't have waited as much and do all this stuff. If I would have taken action, I wouldn't have had the failure that I have, over $100,000 failure. So that's probably the biggest one, is that loss of $100,000, and it taught me the valuable lesson about not passing over opportunities and taking every opportunity you can, especially at a young age, but at any age.
Okay, very cool. And in your TED Talk, you talked a little bit about how, let's see, what was it? Blanking out for a second. But,
I feel you. Let me tell you this real quick while I was thinking about that. So I go up on stage for a TED Talk, and the guy who introduced me, I forgot to take the clicker from him. So I walk up and I say like, "Hey guys, how you doing?" And I go to flip the slide and I'm like, "Wait a second, I don't have my clicker." So that's extremely normal. Like, it happens all the time. So that's how it is. But did you remember it yet or no?
Well, I got another one I'm still thinking
Perfect.
about.
I like
Hey,
it.
maybe I'll just forget it altogether and regret it later on. But what are 3 things that Fuel listeners right now can do to take action?
3 things. I mean, there's a lot of people want a step-by-step formula, but I think at the end of the day, it's different for every single person. It really is. I mean, whatever your goal is, just start taking action with it. It's that simple. Like, ask yourself, what's my goal? And then reverse engineer from that of, okay, what's my goal and then where am I today? Now, how do I get there? And just start taking those actions. But I think 3 actions that they can take would be reading. I think eating healthy is big. That's one that a lot of people don't understand that I do that really helps them with my energy. And the 3rd habit that I would have them do is probably like networking. I think if you know people, you're going to have success in whatever your goal is. So I think those 3 things, I think those pinpoint it.
And work your face off, right?
Work your face off. That's the number 1 thing, yeah.
So if you, oh man, usually I ask my guests at this time, what would they say to their former teenage self? But
I'm a teenager, yeah. No,
so
funny.
I guess what advice would you give yourself a year ago?
That's hilarious. I love that. The advice I'd give to myself a year ago is like, keep doing what you're doing, because I feel pretty content with where I'm at. But I think one thing that I probably would have changed is focusing more on. I mean, I think it really does come back to what I keep saying. Now, you'll notice whenever somebody says something a lot, it's because they really mean it. So what I would tell myself is only focus on impacting people. Like, that'd be the one thing I'd say. Make it your entire focus to provide value to every single human being that you come in contact with. And that's what I love about you, is that you asked me, like, how can I provide value to you? Like, that was your question. So I think that would be the one piece of advice I'd give. But I'm pretty happy with where I am today, so I don't know if I'd say that much different.
Yeah. So a year ago or 2 years ago or 3 years ago, did you know that you'd be where you were at right now?
So I didn't know I'd be where I'm at right now, but I knew that I would have the greatness inside of me that I have right now. Like, I knew that. I knew that I'd become accomplished. Like, there was no question in my mind that I would be different, that I would be more successful than the rest. And the reason why is, like, I know, like, because whether I'm 14 years old and having the success, whether I'm 20 years old, whether I'm 30 years old, whether I'm 40 years old and have the success that I'm having now, at the end of the day, I know that I'm going to work. And when you know that you're going to outwork anybody, you don't feel that there's any competition. You don't feel like nervous, am I going to have success? Because you know at the end of the day, if you keep pushing, you're guaranteed to hit your goal. Until you die or until you quit.
Caleb, I'm so happy because I finally just remembered what I was going to ask you.
There it is. I love it.
It took me for a second. It's like one of those things that's just killing me. But you talked about the law of attraction and how you do believe in the law of attraction, but it's not important as the law of action. What do you say about that?
Yeah, so the law of attraction, a lot of people believe in the law of attraction, and I believe in the law of attraction. I think it's the greatest principle, one of the greatest principles you can ever do, but I also think it's one of the most harmful principles, because a lot of people think law of attraction means you're going to sit in the corner, cross your fingers, and you're going to have success. But that's not really how the law of attraction works. The law of attraction does not work without the law of action. So although I put out there, to God that I want to do a TED Talk. I want to speak with Tony Robbins. I want to speak with Gary Vee. One of my goals is I want to make $100,000 before I turn 15 years old. So although I put that stuff out there, it really happened for me, not just because I wrote it down, not just because I put it out, but because I took action. So the law of attraction doesn't work without the law of action. The law of attraction will work, but you got to make sure that you wake up. It's like, if you want to dream, take a nap. But if you want to succeed, wake up and put in the work.
I love it. Put in that work. And what last parting words of advice do you have for Fuel listeners?
I'll recap that. There's 2 pieces of advice that I always give, which I covered both of them, but I think this is the most important. I would make it my entire focus. I would sit down and I would make my entire focus to strive and to progress physically, financially, relationally, and spiritually. Like, those would be the 4 areas. I would wake up every single morning and I would say, what can I do physically to progress? What can I do financially to make more money? What can I do relationally to have a closer relationship with my parents or with my friends or with whatever that is? How can I progress in, all these areas spiritually, whatever that is? How can I progress there? That would be my main advice, because if you progress in all of those areas, you will have success. And also, the gun that kills the most people is the gun. Stop saying you're like, this literally, listening to this podcast, it was dumb of you. It was literally dumb of you unless you put it into action. Because information doesn't give you transformation. Information plus application gives you transformation. So put in the work and stop saying you're gonna, and progress physically, financially, relationally, and spiritually.
Awesome. So I love that you gave those categories, and I don't know if you do this in your life, but what I do for my goals, and maybe for my few listeners this may work, but I take all of those categories and I set goals within each of those categories so I can achieve it. And very great.
Man, look, he's teaching me some awesome stuff. I love it. We actually, I need to interview you for my company and for my YouTube, and we'll do a flip interview where I interview you as well, because you're doing awesome things.
I would absolutely love that. Thank you so much, Caleb. And where can my few listeners find you and be inspired by everything that you're putting out, because you're doing some great things?
Well, first thing I want to say is make sure that you follow this podcast, you keep listening, because this kid right here, he's doing big things. He's doing awesome things. He's going to be interviewing some awesome people. But if you want to connect with me, just go to CalebMaddix.tv, CalebMaddix.tv, not .com, CalebMaddix.tv.